All right, thank you all for coming today. Before I start, I wanted to just say that Mayor Robertson expressed his regrets for not being able to be here today. He's actually engaged in another scheduled activity, so was unable to attend. But we do have Chairman Glenn Adams here from the county, so he'll be coming up in just this. Well, come on up, sir. But as he's coming up, let me just say Pathways for Prosperity is a broad-based initiative that was convened by the city and Cumberland County. The intent of this initiative really is to build a collaborative effort to improve the economic outcomes for the community and our residents, especially those living in poverty, which we have a lot of around here. So really, the hope today is to share our details about Pathways for Prosperity, what we've been doing over the past couple weeks. Over to your left, my right, to make sure I have those directions right, is many of the staff who've been working on this with us for the last several months now. Been a long time. And so they're going to share some more details on that with you. But to kick this off, I'd like to just introduce Cumberland County Commissioner Chairman Glenn Adams.
Good afternoon. And if you will remember anything the night that I was sworn in as the chairman of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, the initiative I talked about was poverty. And that there had been a series of articles and done by the Fayetteville Observer that talked about poverty in this community, and that we had to address the problem. We had to take this problem on head on. So it's kind of interesting that even as we do this, the motto for the Cumberland County Department of Social Services is families helping families, and that's how I picture Pathways for Prosperity, the initiative. We have invited these various organizations, families, if you call them that, and that's what they are. They're families, all of us coming together for a community conversation and convening all for one reason: to help families living in poverty in our community. And you know, when we talk about poverty, people think about just the poor. We're talking about folk moving from one quintile to another. Upward mobility is what you're talking about when you talk about poverty in this community. Well, Cumberland County is pleased to partner with the city of Fayetteville on this project, and we will also be joining the National Association of Counties in their own initiative. I just left the national convention, and at the national convention, our new president talked about poverty. He talked about poverty from crib to 3 years old, and that's going to be the initiatives for the National Association of Counties throughout this nation. So I want you to join me in encouraging community members to complete the survey that we have, and Adam and Kurt are going to talk about that with you, which will provide us with important information. Then I hope to see you at the Poverty Summit on November the 18th at the Department of Social Services when we start to map out a pathway for prosperity and a way forward for families helping families. It's all about community. We talk about this community, and we're talking about how we are a diverse community, and that we are. But more than that, we are a community that cares for one another. And if you don't care for your neighbor, then we have a serious issue. And that's not what Fayetteville and Cumberland County is about. And I think today, come on up, Kurt. Kurt's going to come up, and City Councilman Kurt Deviere. He and I have, we talked for many of hours talking about poverty, and Adam's going to talk to you. And, you know, we went back and forth as to what we thought this was going to be. But then we figured out something. It's not about us. It's about this community. It's about what we want this community to stand for. And that's what we're standing together. The city, the county, Councilman Kurt Deviere, and County Commissioner Glenn Adams standing together for this community. Kurt.
Thank you, Glenn. A great partnership with Cumberland County and Glenn, and it was just as he mentioned during his comments when he took over as chairman, it was just very unique in the sense that we could work together. Before I move forward, I just want to really thank this leadership team. And some of them are here. We've got about 22 people on our leadership team, and I just want to take a moment and thank them, because this is where the energy happens and this is where the work happens. So I want to thank them for all their work up to this point and a lot of work that we have to do going forward. But this Pathways for Prosperity really boils down to creating a conversation in our city, and more importantly, creating an action plan for how we're going to change that dynamic. Poverty grips this city. Some people would say there's two Fayettevilles because of the poverty that we have in this city. And so the background behind this wasn't Kirk Deviere or Glenn Adams that said, hey, we've got a problem here and we need to address it. So let me give you a little bit of the background. So back in May of 2015, Harvard University released a study. It called Fayetteville dead last when it comes to children growing up in poverty. Dead last. Think about that for a second. We don't need to be last in anything. Then the New York Times came out and they said that we were among the worst counties in the United States for moving children out of poverty. 18th out of 2,000 and something. And then in December of 2015, the Fayetteville Observer shined a big spotlight on this community. They did a 7-series article piece that ran for about a month in December of 2015 called Poverty's Price. And it really highlighted the issues, the concentrated poverty that we had, not just in Fayetteville, but in Cumberland County. And then in November 2016, the MDC, which is an organization out of Durham, a nonprofit out of Durham, was, along with the Belk Foundation, commissioned another report. And in that report, it talked about the economic imperative and the mobility for children for us to have a growing economy in North Carolina. And a portion of it was focused on Fayetteville. They came down and interviewed people here, and they had the results that came from that. And one of the results, astonishing results that came from that, said if you were a child born in a certain area of our city, in one of the poorer areas of our city, you were going to make 18% less than your parents. Think about that. So the other thing that the MDC report did is it said somebody needs to convene. Somebody needs to convene a group to begin to, if you're going to move and change the needle, you have to look at how you convene here in Fayetteville. So in January of 2017, I moved forward on an initiative with the city council. I brought it to the city council to say, we need to be the convener. We can partner with the county. After talking with Chairman Adams, we can partner with the county to convene and begin this dialogue and, more importantly, an action plan. The council unanimously approved that, and that's where we are today. The next steps in this is we have a survey that will come out shortly after this. We have a poverty simulation that we're going to go through, and Adam's going to talk more about some of this. And then we also have the Poverty Summit that's going to happen in November of this year, November 18th. So that's going to create the dialogue, hopefully create the action plan, engage the community. This is not an action drill between nonprofits. This is a community-wide effort. And again, Adam will talk a little bit more about that. Before I turn it over to Adam, what compelled me and really moved me were some of the numbers. So I want to leave you with a couple of the numbers because they're important. And if you forget anything else I've said up here, remember that. 1 in 5 people in our city live in poverty. 1 in 4 children in our city live in poverty. 1 in 4 children live in poverty in our city. 42.9% of single mothers live in poverty. Single mothers. And then again, 18%. If a child is born in a poor neighborhood in this city, they're going to make 18% less than their parents. We have to do something about that. That's exactly what Pathways for Prosperity is. We want to change the dynamic, create a pathway so there's not a deficit of 18%, but there's an increase. I want to walk you through the steps on how we're going to do that. I'm going to ask Adam to come up and walk us through that. So Adam. I'm sorry, Adam Savolta.
Thank you, Councilman. Again, my name is Adam Savolta. I'm with the North Carolina Justice Center. I'm really excited to be part of the leadership team working on the Pathways for Prosperity initiative. My organization, the Justice Center, came into this partnership through a 3-year community economic development grant that's administered by the State Bar. So we are committed to supporting this initiative over multiple years. My role is to serve as a consultant and facilitator, offer technical assistance, and help maintain fidelity with a process that will lead to results. And as we move forward, it's important for me to emphasize that Pathways for Prosperity's contemplated time horizon extends well beyond some of the key events that we'll be discussing this afternoon. Indeed, we're looking at many years of coordinated effort and continuous improvement. A couple of organizing principles that have informed our program development include the following: establishing an environment of openness and transparency, seeking broad-based community input and engagement throughout the process, aligning public understanding, support, and the will to act to address poverty, and finding ways to empower local communities to leverage the strengths and assets that they have. Ultimately, the Pathways for Prosperity model seeks to galvanize a focus on the vital few barriers that, if addressed, will make the greatest impact on economic mobility. Our next step, as Councilman mentioned, is to engage the community through a 20-question survey. It is now available online and on paper. The survey is going to help us start the conversation on how to prioritize and coordinate local action. Information from the survey will set the stage for our summit, again on November 18th, and you can access the survey by visiting the initiative's website, www.pathwaysforprosperity.org, and you can see that website here on the screens. To take the survey, click on the tab, the green tab that's on the right. If you need paper copies of the survey, those are available. If you'd like to secure some for your organization, please reach out to Victor Sharp at the City of Fayetteville. The primary deliverable for the Pathways for Prosperity Summit will be to gain consensus and adoption of between 4 and 5 key objectives, focus areas that will drive the formation and the focus of a community revitalization task force. This task force will be impaneled just after the summit and will include subject matter experts with experience in the key focus areas that emerge in the summit itself. It's going to be a facilitated discussion amongst and within the community so that the community owns the decision making. After the summit, a 90-day clock will start, and the task force will be charged with producing a comprehensive action plan. And that will take us to about mid-February. The next phase will involve standing up neighborhood-level revitalization teams, and this will include some of the neighborhoods within the city of Fayetteville, but then also smaller municipalities across the county. And their task will be to translate the comprehensive action plan into local action plans that can be pursued at the local level. We will do our best to facilitate information flow across the neighborhood and small municipal revitalization teams so that they can share best practices with each other and that we can move information up and down from neighborhood teams to the larger city and county level revitalization task force. An accountability session where we report on and discuss our progress will take place about a year from now. In the meantime, we will keep the Pathways for Prosperity website up to date with key developments such as the comprehensive action plan as well as next steps. In closing, we would like to encourage your viewers and readers to visit the Pathways for Prosperity website, take the community survey, and consider joining us for the summit on Saturday, November 18th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Cumberland County Department of Social Services facility that is located at 1225 Ramsey Street here in Fayetteville. We look forward to your participation and would like to open it up for any.
Before we open
Yes.
up for questions, I just want to add, and Adam did it, but again, the ask is very simple. This is a community issue. The only way we fix this is not going to be a quick fix. When you're talking about poverty, it's going to take a long-term time to change generational poverty. This means we need everyone's involvement. So if you're listening or if you're reading about this, I want you to go to the website, get involved, call, get information, but more importantly, get involved. You have an opportunity to take a survey. have an opportunity to come to a summit. Let your voice be heard. And that's voices from all across the community, because this poverty affects everyone across the city and the county. It affects everyone, and in every different levels.
And you know, one of the things that I think we want to talk about, because we want everybody to understand, this is not unique to Cumberland County. Mecklenburg is way ahead of us. Mecklenburg identified the same issue of poverty in their community, but they didn't sit on it. They decided to take action, and I think that that's what we are talking about today, is that this community is going to grab it, and we're going to take action and move this thing forward. So we open up.
We'll go ahead and open up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
What's your goal for the amount of surveys you're looking to get filled out? Is there like in other projects you've done? This is more for I guess you, but what's kind of your goal and what's your strategy to achieve that goal?
Sure. So we are releasing the survey online. We will distribute that to our networks, some of whom are folks that are known to the city of Fayetteville and Cumberland County. Also, many of whom will see a link from us from our core leadership team, who will share it with their networks. We've also engaged 20 or so community-based organizations who have agreed to support the initiative, which includes engaging their networks to make sure that the survey gets out. We also have 2,500 paper copies, because some of the folks, of course, we want to hear from may not have access to the internet. We are going to deploy those surveys in a handful of ways through the city of Fayetteville, neighborhood watch groups, and other means by which we can distribute. There are also faith-based institutions that will support us. Our goal, to answer your question, is to get 5,000 returns, and we do want to make sure that those who respond are from diverse backgrounds, so we can have as broad a set of voices informing the decisions that we will make on the day of the summit.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So how do you see the county and the city improving if poverty is reduced?
I think there's a lot of ways. When you look at the consequences of poverty or what it affects. So if we can change that dynamic, if we can reduce, if the goal comes out of the summit to be reduced by, let's just say 10,000 people, and that's not what we're trying to do, I'm just putting that number out there, then we're going to see, you know, a less burden on public service, because we're going to have less crime. We're going to see less impact on our schools, because teachers aren't going to be spending as much time with students that may not have slept or may not have eaten that morning. So it kind of affects everything. It's going to affect local businesses. It's going to affect tax dollars coming in, because if we can raise property taxes as well, property values, then you've got additional taxes coming in that can be moved towards other things besides, you know, into economic development or into transit services or into any of the services that the city or the county has from a county perspective.
Well,
Health
you
and
know,
Human Services.
and I will tell you this, and I understand the question is what the city and the county gets out of this, but I think it's a bigger question than that. It's what individuals get out of this. You know, even though I'm sitting here in government, you know, the one thing the Lord said is we won't always have the poor with us, but it's what we do to help them move along and to change their course. Give people hope that there is a different pathway. You know, at the end of the day, in the last couple of days, it has just vexed my heart that I wake up every morning for the last couple of days that the first thing on the TV station is two guys who are sitting out there they thought were asleep that were shot to death in the parking lot of Smoky Bones. Poverty happens on that. Crime goes in that. And the one thing that I always talked about is crime and poverty kind of go together in terms of some of that. But once it seeps into our community, it seeps into our soul. And if it seeps into our soul, it seeks to destroy us. And we're better than that. And this community is better than that. So this is not about, you know, and I do think it's going to help us with social services, the health department, but it's going to help individuals. And that's what this is all about. Helping individuals say, I've got hope. Live the American dream. You know, live the American dream. And the dream is for all of us.
It's changing those outcomes for our children. At the end of the day, this is about changing those outcomes for future generations. And that's really what it's about. All the other stuff is just going to happen because of it,
Okay.
but we're going to change those lives. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about the funding as far as, so right now, the Justice Center is helping, how long will they continue to help, and will it eventually be handed over to the city or in the county, that they keep funding?
You want to speak to the IELTA grant? So, I'll let Adam speak. There was a grant that came down. I'll let Adam speak to that, as well as last year during our strategic plan at the city. The city took this on and said, we're going to champion it, and we're going to have a poverty summit. So we allocated some resources in our budget from that strategic plan. But then we've also reached down across the state, and that's how we got connected. I connected with former Representative Rick Glazier, who now runs the Justice Center. And that's where this grant that we were able to apply for to bring some additional resources down into the city. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that resource.
And I mentioned earlier the grant that we are supported by is administered by the North Carolina State Bar, and it is a 3-year grant. We are approaching the first of those 3 years here, and support, for example, from me and the research staff at the Justice Center, again, will be sustained through that grant for this period of 3 years. That does not mean that we will not stay involved in supporting the initiative. We absolutely will and may through other means. But as far as the larger resource question, I think one thing that's important to share, here at this point is that we don't know what the key focus areas are going to be, that the community helps us decide. And once we do, we'll be in a better place to assess what type of resources it's going to take to implement improvements along those focus areas. Again, these are the key 4 or 5 objectives that the city, county, and local community are going to chase to try and move the needle on economic mobility. Those may involve pursuing funding from federal sources or foundations or other means to ensure that we can coordinate and build capacities where they're needed to meet those focus areas. Does that answer your question?
And how much is the grant for?
The grant itself?
Yeah.
So I should say that the grant supports community economic development in more than just one community. We're working in 8 other communities on economic development. Fayetteville is the place that I am assigned to support, and I'm really happy to be back in the community. I spent a little bit of time here while I was in the military, but my job is to oversee the grant and all of the work across the communities, and I am personally supporting the consulting support here in Fayetteville.
Okay, we can talk about specifics.
Okay, sure.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is the source of your poverty data Census Bureau American Community Survey?
Yes, sir. That's exactly where it comes from. And we're also leveraging the data that was in a lot of the reports that I mentioned, the Harvard study, as well as the MDC, the foundation study as well. So,
And the Bill Foundation.
right,
The Bill
well,
Foundation.
that's the MDC report. Any other questions? All right, we want to thank you for coming out, and again, remind you, visit pathwaysforprosperity.org. Please get engaged, fill out a survey, plan to participate in the summit coming on November 18th, and we look forward to seeing you at the Social Service Building on November 18th. And thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
All right.